Welcome back. I'm Larry King. Joining me now, anchor Bernard Shaw. He's been with CNN from the very first day. In Los Angeles, Sam Donaldson, longtime correspondent at ABC 20 years ago, he watched as Ted Turner lured people like Bernie away. And in New York, the Dean, Walter Cronkite, former anchor and managing editor of the CBS Evening News. Why did you leave a major network to come to CNN, Bernie?
Because I felt it was the last frontier in network television news. And it was a challenge. It was a walk of the plank.
You had the faith that Ted had? You thought it would make it?
Yes.
Even in the early days?
Yes, I did.
Sam, were you one of the naysayers?
Well, Larry, I watched you the first night it went on the cable, and I thought, this is interesting, but after all, we're the big dogs. I mean, these tsetse flies that are crawling up our hide, what are they about? But I did notice that they were taking some of our best people. Bernie, Don Farmer, I looked at your class picture, Bill Zimmerman. And do you know, Larry, they even stole a young lady named Wendy Walker, now Wendy Walker Whitworth. Whatever happened to her?
She's made out okay.
She's your executive producer.
Our senior executive producer, right? Walter, were you, what did you think when CNN started? You were there at the CBS anchor desk, the master of them all. What did you think?
I thought it was a valiant effort that would go nowhere. I couldn't believe that any entrepreneur would put up with the vast expenses of organizing a 24-hour news service and stay with it long enough to make it go. I think Ted Turner deserves a great deal of credit for what he did with this thing, and particularly because I hear, Larry, from you guys, that in all of these 20 years, he's never stuck his nose into the news business. He thinks the idea is a good one, he sticks with it, but he doesn't interfere.
True, Bernie?
Very true.
So you've never had Ted say to you, don't cover this or cover that?
Absolutely not. And you know why? Because Ted knew intuitively that if he ever walked into our newsroom and said, don't do this or don't do that, all the professional women and men at this network would virtually rise in unison and say, sayonara, Ted.
Sam, they took people away from ABC. Was it true that you told them, go, but come back, you'll be back?
Well, I told some of them you need a job, you know, when it folds, if it folds. But, you know, Ted deserves a lot of credit, but he was also very lucky. He told you just briefly about how he had competition from ABC, a cable network. The fact is, we had the cable operators. Leonard Goldenson, our founder, had started a satellite news service, and with another partner, and we had the operators. And Ted Turner, if you're still around, you do remember that you told me just a few years into your operation that if ABC hadn't folded its satellite news service, 6 months later, you would have been bankrupt and gone out of business. True?
He's gone, but they did fold it.
We folded it because Leonard Goldenson wanted to get the bottom line in set to sell the network. Ted's a very great guy, but he was very lucky, too.
Walter, didn't CBS contemplate as well an all-news channel?
I don't know that we contemplated, well, we probably contemplated it. Everybody contemplated it, Larry. I don't think we were seriously considering it. I was on the board at that time, and that never really was discussed. We had a cable channel, one of the earliest cable channels of them all, which was basically an interview channel, an intellectual book discussion channel. Bill Paley, who founded CBS, the late Bill Paley, loved that idea, held on to it as long as he could, but it never made a dime, and finally he dropped it. He gave up a channel that he probably should have held on to for a while.
Bernie was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say to Sam, on the one hand, Ted Turner was lucky, Sam, but he also was and remains a superb tactician. CNN was very lean, very mean. It could make decisions virtually on the spot without committees.
No question about it.
That was a strategic factor.
Good point.
No question about it, Bernie. I think Ted, as I say, deserves all the credit for it. It's been a great success. He had a great idea. But you all of us need some luck. You've had some luck. Now, don't tell me, hey, it was just a steady rise to the top.
Oh, absolutely not.
But
When
Sam,
did you know?
Sam, you know that luck plays a big part, but you got to have the talent to make use of it when you get it.
Luck is the residue of design, as Branch Rickey once said. When did you know it had turned the corner, Bernie?
It came in increments. It came September, the same year that we had launched, when a Titan II missile exploded in an Air Force silo out near Damascus, Arkansas, and the Air Force was saying, no problem, even though one person was killed. Don't worry, folks, there was no nuclear warhead on the missile. Well, I made a call to a totally unimpeachable source at the Pentagon, and while a U.S. Air Force officer was standing out there at ground zero telling the American people in the world there is no nuclear warhead aboard this missile, atop this missile, my source at the Pentagon said not only was there a warhead, but guess what? They're looking for it. And we had pictures of skirmish lines out there, and they found the warhead a couple days later.
We have less than a minute. Sam, how did it change the news business?
Well, totally, because you're 24 hours, and we don't compete against that. And for me, it was far different. When I was at the White House the first time around, I got a little beat at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd still have it at 6:30. When I went back with Bill Clinton just recently, if I caught some beat at 2 o'clock, by 2:30, Wolf would have it, John King would have it. By 6:30, it would just be old news.
Walter, if you were starting today, would you come to work here?
I think I would, yeah. I think the excitement of the 24-hour service, just walking through your newsroom down there gives me a little thrill up and down the back of my spine. It's obviously a dynamic working area that I think any young journalist would like to be in. And as a young journalist, I'd come along.
Thank you all very much. Bernie, it's a big night for you, I know. Sam, thanks for joining us, and Walter as well. Still ahead, Magic Johnson, Peter Jennings, and more extraordinary stories from the 1980s.
I was just like a kid. I mean, it's only, what, 23 years old. We did a lot of traveling all over the world because we didn't have the bureaus. And one of those places was Beirut. It's basically the first war zone I've ever been to. Back then, it was such a, what a scary place. It's just a horrific place. So many different factions fighting each other. This is back in the Reagan era, where he was sending the Marines in. But they had built a 4- to 5-story headquarters for them near the airport. October 23rd, 1983, I basically got rattled out of my bed with this massive explosion, and I knew something was really wrong.
The blast came shortly after 6:15 in the morning. Colonel Timothy Garrity described how it happened.
A truck loaded with high explosives crashed through 2 barricades in front of the battalion landing team headquarters and ended up in the lobby of the main complex.
Here was this 4- to 5-story building housing all these Marines, and there was absolutely nothing. It was just rubble. There were areas where you could see people buried in the rubble and people trying to get them out. It was really, really bad.
Rescue crews tore through tons of concrete and steel throughout the day Sunday in efforts to reach an undisclosed number of U.S. Marines and sailors.
It was absolutely nothing like it I've ever seen. That was a really eye-opening, traumatic experience for me because it was really the first time I'd seen death.